The Josef Herman Foundation marks Holocaust Memorial Day each year with a live event normally, but this year in 2021 we're moving online. Thank you for joining us. Diolch am ymuno ni. The theme for this year's Holocaust Memorial Day is Be the Light in the Darkness. Byddwch y Goleuni yn y Tywyllwch. At this tumultuous time, people across Wales, the rest of the United Kingdom and the world have become increasingly divided. Many of us are facing uncertainty, feeling fear and dealing with grief. Denial, division and misinformation is positioned to take advantage of this vulnerable moment in the history of humanity. We must remain vigilant. We can choose to be the light in the darkness, at home, in public and online, by showing kindness, resistance, and by sharing stories of hope. We can be the light. So to mark Holocaust Memorial Day 2021, we'll begin by hearing from our patron, David Herman. This will be followed by Carol Hopkin, a trustee of the foundation, who will be in conversation with Humberto Gatica, a poet and photographer who escaped from Chile during the military dictatorship there. Then Faye Miles Board will read to us one of the most well-known poems of the Holocaust, First They Came. In the next section, we'll hear from Jessica Lerner and her son Isaac and nephew Amir as they share some of their family history, testimonials and introduce us to a very special film preview. But our final thoughts today will be with Mairead Hopwood. Her chosen readings and words will invite us to remember the past and to search for the light that can make all the difference. We'll close today's events with a performance by a talented young violinist, Meryl Paget. Holocaust Memorial Day serves as a reminder that all of us not only have the ability to resist the negative forces of today, but we have a responsibility to do so. Mae hynny'n cynnwys pawb sy'n ymuno ni heddi, a dyna pam ni'n gofyn I bob un ohonoch I fod yn olau yn y tywyllwch.
Hello, my name is David Herman, and my father was the artist Josef Herman, who lived in South Wales for 11 years, a time and a place that changed his life and that helped him find his voice as an artist. Ystrad had a special place in his heart for the rest of his life. I will be thinking of him on Wednesday on Holocaust Memorial Day. His entire family, Jews from Warsaw, were all killed during the Holocaust. He was the only one who survived. Members of my mother's family were also murdered by the Nazis. So for me and my family, and for many other Jews in Britain, Holocaust Memorial Day is a very special day. But what I want to ask is why Holocaust Memorial Day might matter to other people who are not Jewish or who have no personal links with the Holocaust, and why my father's experience and his art may be of interest to others all these years later. Firstly, he was a refugee, one of about 70,000 Jewish refugees who fled from persecution, and was always grateful all his life to Britain for giving him a home in Glasgow, in South Wales, and later in England. He came with nothing, no English, no possessions. The 20th century was the century of refugees. And increasingly, we've begun to think more about how so many people are being driven from their homes because they're the wrong race, the wrong religion, the wrong kind of person. Holocaust Memorial Day is just one moment in the year, and there should be others, when we can pause and think about people who are forced to flee for their lives. As Joe Biden said the other day in his inauguration speech, we should think about what it's like to be someone else, to be in someone else's shoes, including refugees. Holocaust Memorial Day is also about loss, and the past year, so many people have lost loved ones. We're now approaching 100,000 deaths from coronavirus, nearly 4,500 in Wales alone. How do we cope with such loss? How do we continue with our lives? Holocaust Memorial Day, again, is just one day in the year when we can pause for a while and think about loss, how we remember those we've lost, what is our relationship with those we've lost. Some of you knew my father, and I hope will remember him as a kind and warm man. How do you lose everything? Your family, the home you grew up in, your neighborhood, your country and your language, and remain kind and warm and not be consumed by bitterness, anger, and depression? If you're an artist like Joseph, how do you go on and create images of love and life? Mothers and babies from South Wales, fathers and husbands at work, talking on street corners, singing in choirs. And what do you need to rebuild your life? What my father needed was the friendship and kindness of strangers in South Wales. This year, so many of us are asking, how can we go on? Who is there for us in our moment of loss? Perhaps we need to think about a coronavirus Memorial Day when we can think of those we've lost and those who have lost them. Many Jewish refugees never really recovered from the camps or from their losses. Many others were able to make a contribution to this country. Paintings of Welsh coal miners, discoveries in science like penicillin, the Stoke Mandeville Games for paraplegics, new histories, new works of literature, new ideas in philosophy and psychology. There's so much to grieve for, but also so much to celebrate, so much to be thankful for. It's good to have a day to celebrate what others have done, to express our thanks as well as our sadness. Some of us wanted a Holocaust Memorial Day to remember our dead. We need memorials, museums, special days to remember terrible times from the past and those who suffered. We shouldn't pull down memorials and statues, but build new ones. We should have more days in the year to remember those we've lost. Memory matters to all of us. And paintings matter too. They bring other people and other places to life. They reach out to us from somewhere else long ago. Another Jewish refugee who died in 1940, fleeing for his life, once said, "Friendship is not the abolition of distance. It is the bringing of distance to life." Art is the same. Holocaust Memorial Day is the same. Thank you for listening.
Umberto,
Yes,
we met on the university course for tutors. It was called phototherapy, and we had to reenact a traumatic time in our lives. But your story made mine fade into insignificance. You were born in South Chile,
yes, in the south of Chile.
it was the territory of the Huilichi people.
Yes, it's a small village called Malalwe. No, it's a place surrounded by farmers, sawmills, German settlers, and Indian communities. No, and
Yes.
the farms and the sawmill are the job provided for the people who live there. No?
Yes. It looked very much like parts of Wales, lakes and forests and lots of rain.
Yes, it's a lot of rain. Yes, yeah, because it's a it's a rainy area, and that is the reason in which the main source of the economy are forest, no?
Yes.
Timber. This is the main thing there, no? And of course, the
You-
place is not far away from a couple of lakes and volcanoes in the background, and which
Yes.
make the landscape.
Your mother, yes. Your mother died when you were 18 months old.
Yes, yes. I was very young when she died, and after she died, no, my father took to me, no, because he had to travel looking for a job from one place to another, no.
Yes.
But after a while, he realized, no, he couldn't cope, no. Then he was looking how to solve the problem, and in the end, no, he gave me in care with one uncle, no, and this with him and his wife, no, I grew up, no, until adult, I think, no, and
Yes.
I did left home.
And you went to Santiago then. You didn't see your father after you were 3, but in Santiago you started photographing the impoverished people that I saw all the way from the airport, the shanty towns.
Yes, yeah, that's because I was a time when I was working in the social development, and then we use photography as a visual aid, no? Because this was a kind of project in which we try to encourage people to organize and work, no, in a way to improve their life. My responsibility there, because I was in charge of the culture, no, and we organize work, no, in workshop. We have workshop, a poetry workshop, drama, community journalism, filmmaking, no, and music.
Yes.
And sometimes, no, we have we have a event all the time. No, we have bring artists from outside the community. No, and the people from the community as well. They have the chance to perform.
That's wonderful. I wanted to go back, well, between the war years, from 1926, actually, in Poland, anti-Semitism gained control until it became, as Joseph said, state policy. And he said that his motherland was governed by a military dictatorship. And this is what happened in Chile in 1973.
Yes, yes. In 1973, the 11th of September, no, the date is very well known, 11th of September. We had a military coup. They deposed a president in which he was elected by the people. But the thing is, the Americans were very unhappy with the election of this doctor, because he was a medical doctor, because he was a member of the Chilean Socialist Party, no? And the Americans were trying to avoid any possibility, no, to have a second Cuba, no?
Yes.
And from the beginning, they support, no, and give assistance to the Chilean ruling class, no, to depose, no. The American as well at the same time, no, they try to erode the Chilean economy through the boycott, terrorism,
Yeah.
and well, the situation was a little bit chaotic, no, and the economy was in big trouble, no, and on the top of that, they put many sanctions, no, then not more or less to not allow to the Chilean economy to develop, no.
Yes.
In the end, yes, yeah, the military, no, give the coup, and this was
It sounds
a very brutal
like,
military coup. Yes.
yes. It was probably, well, Nixon and the CIA involvement, very much like what happened in Cuba,
Well,
because they thought it was a threat.
yes, yeah, because now today, for instance, no, if the people are interested, they have access to all the documents, no, and how Mr. Nixon and Kissinger, no, act, no, and well, yes, yeah, because on the other hand, you see our main resource is copper, no, but the copper are in American hand. The American company are operating, no, there, and they don't leave anything, no, because they manage to pay not very much tax, for instance, you see, and then they take the copper and took it to outside the country, you see. Well, Swansea have some link in the past, no, when the British company were exploiting the copper, no, they came to Swansea for to the refinery, no, and yes, and that's
a strong link there, yes.
Yes, yeah, and one of the yes.
in the military dictatorship, then I know Allende committed suicide in the government buildings, but thousands were then put in, and you were put in detention centers.
Yes, because they taken everybody to in detention, you see, because the military in the beginning, no, they have to suppress no any kind of resistance, if you like. No,
Yes.
then I wasn't, because the military coup was in September. In the beginning of November, no, I was taken, I was detained, no, and I spent in the first place, no, it was in the civilian police headquarters, no, and I spent there about 6 weeks, and they took me to the interrogation room, blindfolded and with handcuff. Then the interrogations is a very hard one, because they have these methods, a physical and psychological one. And depend now who is going to interrogate you, because in a way I was lucky, because with the civilian police, they are expert, and they know the limit, and the soldiers, they don't care about that, you see.
No.
And the worst were the people from the Air Force and from the Navy. But doesn't mean the army was was very brutal as well. Then I have a very hard time, I think, because every time they beat me up, they punch me and kicking, but nothing more than that. Because in another center, for instance, was worse than that, you see. The electricity, or take your nails out with the players, for instance, things like that. It was really brutal. And
It was the worst.
yes, after that, they moved to a sports center, but over there were no interrogation at all, And then, because we were waiting, with a high level of uncertainty, because we don't know what is going to happen to you, Probably going to send back to another interrogations, things like that. But in the end, they sent me to the jail, normal jail, And I spent the rest of until August 74, because someday, a little bit out of the blue, I was released, in which we were a little bit nervous as well, because the military, they managed to release you, you see, but the secret police were waiting for you outside the jail, for instance, see? And then you disappear, because we have a lot of people who disappear, and nobody ever knew about what happened to them. Then
they helped you to get to Argentina?
Yes, because when I was in detention, we had the help of one of the Christian organizations, The Catholic Church is very powerful in Chile.
Yes.
And they create this organization called Vicarage of Solidarity, in which they give legal assistance and help, to the political prisoners. At the same time, they have a campaign, about the violation of the human right in Chile. Now, after I was released, we were advised and helped to leave the country, and then we decided to go to Argentina. In the beginning, expecting there after a couple of months, everything will be okay for us to go back, but it wasn't the case.
No, because there was a military coup in Argentina.
Yes. We spent 1 year in Argentina, but the situation was very volatile. It was very dangerous, essentially, if you are a foreigner. And in between, no, we were in contact with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, no, in which they took our cases, no, and tried to help, no.
Yes.
And we apply for 3 countries. No, everyone have these 3 options. No,
Yes.
we apply for Canada, Sweden, and Great Britain. And Great Britain was the first country to offer a visa. And a part of that, my wife got a grant from the World University Service and a place for the postgraduate studies in the Swansea University.
It's wonderful. So you came to Swansea, but then that wasn't easy. You had a young daughter, Andromeda, who was very ill. And you
Yes.
told me that you learned your English basically going from hospital to hospital to get help for her.
Yes, that was the case. Andromeda was born here in 1976. When she was 6 months old, no, the doctor discovered a tumor, no, and the diagnosis was she got a cancer. From then on, for the next 3 years, we weren't going from hospital to hospital, no, from Swansea to the Lando Hospital, to Heath Hospital, Velindre Hospital, Chepstow, and in the end, Great Ormond Street in London. And she died there.
That's Josef Herman also lost a child when he came to Astragundas. They lost a baby with his first wife, Catriona.
Yeah.
But Joseph always said that all that he'd been through, that his art was a nurse. It healed him when he painted. You feel that with your poetry?
Well, yes, yeah, with poetry, and after we came here, for instance, you see, I have these the images and the need to produce something, but I realized something was missing, no? And somehow, no, I retook photography because what happened in Chile, I was doing photography, but the equipment wasn't mine. And I couldn't afford not to buy a camera because in Chile it's very, very expensive because it's an imported item. No?
Yes.
And then here my priority was to get a camera and start doing some work. And somehow I have this idea, to work with this kind of a collage they are doing, building
Yes.
images and taking pictures of that, and it was more or less answer my questions, But at the same time, the main thing was it was a very good therapy. Helped me a lot, not only to understand the images, but at the same time to understand the projection, and why we're doing that, And from then onwards, more or less, I carry on producing images, apart producing the more other kind of images like, I don't know, a landscape or cityscape and still life, and things like that.
The poems and the images go very much together for me. I know your first collection, The Sand Garden, all the proceeds go to the Swansea Bay Asylum Seeker Support Group. Could we read from The Sand Garden? There's one I particularly love. It's called Exile.
Yes.
If you read in your native mother tongue, and I will read your translation into English.
Okay. Exilio. Abandono mis huesos al azar de los aeropuertos. Me pierdo en ciudades bajo la pesadilla de sombríos hoteles. Algunas noches alguien muere en mis sueños. En otras persigo mis regresos a la música de mis lluvias y mis paisajes rotos.
Exile. I abandon my bones in the uncertainty of airports. I get lost in cities under the nightmares of lugubrious hotels. Some nights, somebody dies in my dreams. In others, I chase my way back to the music of my rains and my broken landscapes. Umberto, this is just a taster for a much longer interview we're going to do when we're all back together safely for the Josef Herman Foundation. So can we end with ceremonial remains?
All right, okay.
There is a beautiful image to go with that of the stone in the tree.
Vestigios ceremoniales. Primero fue árbol, luego se hizo piedra, testigo eterno de un paisaje herido. Creció rodeado de ciudades que el tiempo ha reducido a una porción de polvo y un puñado de cenizas que el viento esparce y la lluvia borra.
Ceremonial remains. First it was a tree, then it cast itself into stone. Eternal witness of a wounded landscape, it grew, surrounded by cities that time has reduced to a portion of dust and a handful of ashes that the wind spreads and the rain erases. There's a lot of healing in that poem, that
Yes.
nature will heal the wounds that we inflict on our planet. But Umberto, I'd love to thank you on behalf of the Josef Herman Art Foundation for sharing your life and your images and your poetry. And we will be meeting up again as soon as possible.
Thank
you
you
so
very much. Thank you. Yes.
Pastor Martin Niemöller is best known for his poem, First They Came. This is one of the most famous poems about the Holocaust. But in himself, the pastor was a very controversial figure. Initially, he was an anti-Semitic Nazi supporter who blamed Germany's misfortunes on Jews, foreigners, and the weakness of the Weimar Republic. He was impressed with the Nazi Party's promise to improve the life of ordinary people. His views changed when the Nazi Party took over control of the German Protestant Church. They appointed a church leader and even altered the text of the Bible, taking out passages that they deemed Jewish ideology. Niemöller split with the party when he started to understand that they were a dictatorship. He was imprisoned in concentration camps and finally liberated from Dachau in 1945 by American troops. After World War II, Niemöller repeatedly expressed regret about his previous support for the Nazi Party and his failure to oppose it more broadly. He was also one of few Germans who called upon their fellow countrymen to accept their responsibility for Nazi atrocities. Niemöller's poem has inspired people across the world to speak up for people who are discriminated against. But his personal history is complex and controversial. His story is a reminder, though, that people often do not fall necessarily into a category of good or bad, and we must learn from experiences like his to understand how the Holocaust could have happened. First, they came for the communist, and I didn't speak out because I was not a communist. And then they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trades unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.
Diwrnod o y coed. Chwilio o goed ym Mharsalen. Fe'i glanwyd hwyr yn goeden am bob corff ar losglwyd yn ffyrneinwyr. Coed sydd yn estyn i gwreiddiau I ganol llidiw bobl. Yn y llidiw sy'n gwneud I fynd ar gol. Hirfanwent, nad yw. O'r holl ganrifoedd a gerddodd ar y ddaear yn cychwyn y byd, yr ugeinfedydd fwyaf barbaraidd ohonynt nhw I gyd. A bydd y nesaf yn waith am fod y bomiau a'r cleifiau yn fwy, a dyfeisiwn yn lawer diwedd sawl meddwl nhw. A phan mewn trydydd ryfel I gadw ei dychrynllyd oedd, ni ellir rifo Sefydliad llosg, na rifo y chwaith y coed. Dawt cyffwr ar I newid ei lliwiau, gwyrdd, melyn a gwyn. Ond coed wy'n marwolaeth gan aros am y dwy Pan fyddant yn hen blynyddoedd wedi tyfu i'r damwain, fe'n wel y genhedlaeth honno, nad oedd yn ni y llawer saith.
Isaac Sycha Thomas yw fy enw I. Dwi wedi cael ei enwi ar ôl fy hen wncl Sycha yma, sydd wedi cael ei lladd yn y Holocost. A oherwydd nad ydw I wedi gallu rhoi fy nhrwyn allan am gyfnod mor hir, yr ydw I wedi gwirioni ar natur. Rydw i'n cofio amser pan na fyddai awyr las o didog, trydar adar, golau, leiad a blodau wedi dal fy sylw i'n hir. Mae hynny wedi newid ers pan ddoes I yma. Un noson, yn ystod gwyliau'r silgoen, enghraifft, pan oedd y tywydd mor boeth, mi wnes ymdrech I gadw fy llygaid yn agored tan hanner awr wedi 11 mwyn cael golwg iawn ar y lleiad. Ar fy men fy hun bach am unwaith. Gwaithfawr modd, by'r aberth yn ofer gan fod y golau'n rhy lachar I fi allu mentro agor y ffenestr. Mi es I lawr y grisiau ar fy men fy hun ac edrych allan drwy ffenestri'r gegin ar breifat. Mae llawer o pobl yn gweld harddwch natur, llawer yn cysgu allan o dro i dro o dan yr awyr serenog, a llawer o pobl mewn ysbytau a charchardau yn deheu am y diwrnod pan fyddwn nhw'n rhydd i fwynhau'r hyn sydd gan natur i'w gynnig. Ond ychydig sydd wedi ei hynysu fel ni, wedi ei rwystro rhag mwynhau hyfrydwch natur sydd ar gael i'r cyfoethog a'r tlawd fel ei gilydd. Yn anffodus, ar wahân i rai adegau prin, rydw i'n gorfod edrych ar natur drwy llenni hiachryd wedi ei hwylu dros ffenestri bydron ac mae hynny'n amharu ar y mwynhad. Natur ydy'r un peth na a dim gymryd ei le.
Anne Frank, a German Jewish girl, wrote, "Our freedom was severely restricted by a series of anti-Jewish decrees. Jews were required to wear a yellow star. Jews were required to hand in their bicycles. Jews were forbidden to use trams. Jews were forbidden to ride in cars, even their own. Jews were required to do their shopping between 3 and 5 p.m. Jews were required to frequent only Jewish-owned barbershops and hairdressers. Jews were forbidden to be out on the streets between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Our family on my mother's side were actors in the Yiddish theatre in Lodz, Poland. Around 1920, my great-grandfather Abraham Ariel came to London. His sister Bella Ariel went to Argentina while others stayed in Poland. The families became separated and contact was lost. After years of research, my cousins Ros and Mark Johnson reconnected the families and met Argentinian cousins in Buenos Aires. One of them, Divina Gloria, granddaughter of Bella Ariel, continues as an actress and singer on the Argentinian stage today. Overjoyed by being reunited with the family in the UK and inspired by Mark's research, Divi has directed a documentary film of the life of the family in Poland, their theatre travels around Europe, and their tragic loss in the Holocaust of World War II. It is called in Spanish Sangre no es agua, blood is thicker than water. The full film with English subtitles is planned to be released soon, but Divi and Mark were eager to share an exclusive work-in-progress preview with us today, with excerpts from the family's Holocaust story.
Harry Ariel was often spoken about in the family with great fondness. He was the cousin of my father-in-law. He was one of the very last Yiddish theatre actors in London. He seemed mysterious to me and I wanted to know more.
I was born in Lodz, Poland, a child of a theatrical family, and I started acting when I was a child of 7. I had terrible dramatic scenes and I must have done it very well because I cornered the market for child parts. And then came the big chance. After working a season with then the great comedy star of the Yiddish stage, Benzion Wittler, we became great friends and he was offered to come for a season to the Grand Palais in London. And he recommended me for the company as a juvenile light comedian.
One distinct point I remember was when I was 14, Harry Ariel came and gave a performance in our local town hall, which I went to with my parents. It was all in Yiddish, and the only real Yiddish I knew were just expressions and things my parents would say to each other, and quite often they were discussing us and something we'd done that was wrong, and you knew by their tone of voice that it was disapproving, but didn't really know much of what they were saying. But lots and lots and lots of expressions in different situations. But I was learning German at school by then and managed to pick up bits and pieces throughout the performance. And then afterwards we went round the back and we met Harry, and I can remember feeling a little bit overawed as a 14-year-old, but he was a lovely man and very kind, and that sense of connection was very strong.
I was in seventh heaven. I was delighted. I thought this is my career's beginning now. And I was ready. I made myself ready to go and collect my Polish passport and the visa to travel to England. And this was exactly on the 1st of September 1939. And my dream was shattered. This was the outbreak of the war, and I did not go to England.
I wanted to talk a little bit about growing up and being aware of the Holocaust. I don't know when I became aware exactly, but I do have one very specific image in my head. I was about 8 years old, and I found a picture in a book of a cart with lots of bodies all stacked up on it. It was a line drawing, but for me left a very, very strong image which I can see to this day in my mind. I can remember thinking how awful that was, that these were people, real people, and that they'd just been treated like this. So it was an awareness, and my parents talked about their experiences during the Second World War, but other than that, it was fairly remote. I knew that members of our family had died, but didn't really know who they were or have a particular connection with them. But I had an overall feel for the events from the broader community and from things my parents said and things I read.
I found out that my whole family perished in Auschwitz in 1942. And I was left all alone. So nothing else for me to do in Poland anymore, and some other actors in the same situation decided to leave Poland and to seek a new life, a new world.
His entire family had died in the Holocaust. I thought how tragic that was, and what a terrible loss, and how sad for Harry to have no family at all.
will bei mir nicht kaufen, ois gehen, weil ich musen wie a Huhn.
Goleuni, dyma'r thema, ac rwy wedi dewis dwy gerdd, one by Emily Dickinson and one by Waldo Williams. Mae'r ddwy yn sôn am eiliad o olau. And in both poems we learn that sometimes such a moment of light can come to us, and once that happens, then nothing is ever the same. For Emily Dickinson, it enables us to find the meanings. For Waldo Williams, it enables us to see one another in one another. And it is that, to echo another poet's phrase, which makes all the difference. Darllenaf y Saesneg yn gyntaf. There's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, that oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us. We can find no scar, but internal difference where the meanings are. None may teach it any. 'Tis the seal despair, an imperial affliction sent us of the air. When it comes, the landscape listens. Shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the look of death. As we turn to the Welsh poem, let's look at the title, Adnabod. This is a key word in the poetry of Waldo Williams. It's difficult to translate into English. It means both to know and to recognise, and it's used especially in the context of human relationships. For Waldo, if we could but adnabod each other, really know and recognise that for all the apparent difference in the outward branches, that we all stem from the same root, then all would be well. Adnabod, the poem I'm going to read, ends with a description of the spirit of Adnabod as a beam of light. Rhag yr hemp sydd I lawr dad elfennwr, a gill rhwng I fysedd fyd. Tyrd yn ôl, hen gyfanwr, ag ymestyn i'n hachub ynghyd. Cyfyd pen sarffaidd sinister o ganol torchau gwybod, rhag bradwriaeth, rhag dinister, dy gymorth o awen adnabod. Y mae rhin cyd eneidiau'n ymagor o'i dyfnder lledelich yn hael. Mae ein rhyddid rhagor yn hir dyddirgelwch i'w gael. Ti yw'r wyrth, ti yw'r waddol a geidw bob cymdeithas yn werth. Ti yw'r un gell dragwyddol yn ymguddio yng nghewyllun pob cerdd. Dy dystion yw'r ser yw hamseriad yn treiglo I cylchoedd trwy'r cant, rhai clir fel cof cariad a sicr fel dychymyg y sant. Ti fo'n harf, ti fo'n hynny, ti sy'n dangos y ffordd ddi-ffiant. Tosturi rhoi ni, ath nerth ar esgynfa maddeiant. Ti yw'n hanadl, ti yw ehedeg ein hiraeth i'r wybren ddofn, ti yw'r dofr sy'n rhedeg rhag diffeithwch pryder ac ofn. Ti yw'r halen i'n puro, ti yw'r deifwynt i'r hwysg amdanom, ti yw'r teithiwr sy'n curo, ti yw'r tywysog sy'n aros ynom. Gwaethaf bwytawr y blynyddoedd, ti yw'r gronyn ni red yw grap, dyrnu'r mynyddoedd, drysu'n helynt a'n hap. Ti yw'r eiliad o olau, sydd a'i naws yn cofleidio'r yrfa. Tir yr haul drwy'r cymylau, ti yw I baladr ar y borfa. In these lockdown times, as we count and mourn present-day losses, and on this commemorative day, as we mourn and remember the many million losses of the past, as we remember each one, let's search for that slant of light that can make the difference until we find it.